Hi, this is Daniel from TrustGraph, and today I'm going to show you a new demo that utilizes not only our knowledge graphs and knowledge graph retrieval, but MCP tools in an agentic structure. And we thought, what would be a good demo to combine all these different kind of tools in a sort of real world example? And one that we've heard a lot lately is what about retail? Well, retail can be quite complex. You often have centralized data stores that are potentially in the cloud or offsite that have customer records and information about the products. But then you likely have information that's much more local, on-prem, or even in point of sale or edge devices about order fulfillment. Some retail stores actually do order fulfillment from the very stores you shop at. And then you would actually have the inventory systems to be tracking all the inventory locally. Well, what if you're trying to understand all of this? Well, perhaps those customer records and the product catalog are in this centralized repository as a knowledge graph. And then potentially your retail order fulfillment and your store inventory. Well, what if those were set up as MCP servers? And that's what we've done with this demo. And the demo repo with all the files will be linked down below. So I've already set all this up, and we can see this is the repo. We have these four files, which I'm going to go through those just a little bit quickly so we can understand those. This is customer records stored in the form of RDF turtle. So don't get too worried about that. This is just a way to very simply ingest a knowledge graph. So we have some customers here. We have Alice, Bob, and Charlie Brown. And we see some information about them, their email, telephone, address, information that you would likely have for customers, which would also be PII, personal information that is oftentimes, very heavily protected. We'll get to that a little bit later. We have some information about products. As you can see, this retail store is obviously in the outdoor space. We have lots of information about, tents, hiking equipment, sleeping bags, etc. All the kind of things that you might have to go camping or hiking in the outdoors. And then we see our MCP servers. We have one for inventory and stores around the Pacific Northwest. We see for each product what kind of stock we have. And if there is no stock, we'll see that's going to return an out of stock. Then we also have some orders, their status, when they'll be delivered, and what was in the order. Now, as before, we've gone through and shown how we can configure all this through the workbench in WinTrustGraph now. But we also set up a script so that we can configure this much more quickly. So this is just a little bash script that's going to load all the turtle files. That's what we're doing here. We're just going to load those really quickly. And then we're going to set our MCP tools. And because I'm using Docker, we're going to have to use this address. And then we're going to do it on port 9870. And then we create our agent tools, and two of which are going to be mapped to the MCP tools that they use. And then also knowledge graph queries that are going to be querying the customer records and the product catalog. You'll also notice, and this is going to become important later, I set collections. Yeah, I know I've talked about this a lot before, access controls. So I loaded the customer records in the collection customers, and I loaded the products in the collection products. And you'll notice when I created these tools, the product query can only access products, and the customer query can only access customers. That'll come into play later. So I have everything already set up. We go to our agent tools, you'll see all of them, and we'll see the MCP tools. And just to show that we do have the knowledge, everything is loaded in the system. It's all loaded in the same place. So I know that one of them was called a trail seeker. So what happens if we do that? We'll see the trail seeker flow. We'll also see some other information with much lower scored. So we go here and like always, we can pull up the knowledge graph and look at all this information. We can go back and also see that Alice Johnson was there, and we can see information about Alice. So we can see that both the customer records and the product records are both loaded in the system. So now we have this agentic flow set up. We change that to agent. Now let's go back. We have a test prompt set up. Let's look at it. We scroll down and we see, I'm Alice Johnson. My order is ORD 99887. Can you check my order status, contents, arrival date, address, and email address on file? I also need a Nordic Wave Comfort 20 sleeping bag. Is it in stock in Denver? And what headlamp would you recommend as an accessory for the Trail Seeker Pro 10? So there's a lot of things going on here. Let's dive into this. We have order number, so that's going to check that MCP tool, status, contents, arrival date, but also we have address and email address. That's got to query the customer records. Then we're also looking, is it in stock in Denver? And then what headlamp would you recommend as accessory? So that has to query the products catalog. So we're querying all of these systems in a single prompt. So let's go check it out and see how it responds. For this demo, I happen to be using Mistral Medium, their latest frontier model. And we can see we're already starting to step through the process and checking for how we need all the information we need to answer this question. See here, we've actually pulled one of the MCP tools. We've done a knowledge graph query for the customer records. We've now done the inventory MCP tool to find out what was available in Denver. And now we're querying the product catalog for accessories for the Trailseeker Pro tent. And we've now got all the information we need to finish this response. And here we go. Here's the complete information. It's shipped, estimated delivery is this date, items, address, email, and product availability. It's out of stock in Denver, and the accessory. And if we go here, we'll see that information is all in these, either the knowledge graph or in the MCP servers. Now, as I talked about the collections, well, what happens if we had a flow where we didn't want to have access to personal information? If I just take this tool, because it's the only tool that right now has access to this information, and I delete it, this agentic flow now no longer has access to Alice's information. So if we come back and take this query again, let's see what happens. So we've once again queried the MCP tools for a response. We're also checking the inventory and stock in Denver. And the agent is now thinking about all the things that it's been asked to do. We're now finding the information about the accessory. But you'll notice I have gathered most of the information, but still need to return her address and email. And you'll see address and email could not be retrieved. That's because it didn't have access to the added information. So what does this mean? Access controls. Because we created those collections for the customer records and the product catalog, we can now create agent access controls. So the non-human identity here has only access to, in this case, no PII. And as you can imagine, the sky really is the limit with these capabilities. And there's so much more to come in TrustGraph. We've just announced our release of 1.2.15. So much more to come in 1.3.